Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you and we appreciate you joining us for our conversation today about the reopening of Salamanca schools. This session is also being streamed live on Facebook Live on the Salamanca City Central School District Facebook page. In a moment, I will turn it over to Dr. Beeler and our principals who will help answer questions and hopefully provide some clarity to the questions that you might have as Salamanca schools look to reopen schools in just a few short weeks. The administrative team, our district supervisors, our faculty and staff have done a remarkable job of managing the COVID crisis since March. And as we look forward to the future, I want to personally thank them as well as our parents and our students for remaining engaged in this conversation about the future of our school. I would like to remind our community members that we remain steadfastly committed to the principles of safety, wellness, and instruction for all students, our community, and our staff. I can promise you that we will not waver in this steadfast commitment to these principles that will keep us safe and allow us to return to instruction. When we take your questions, please submit those questions into the chat room on Zoom. Please list your full name so we know who is asking the question, and please include a notation of the building that your child or children may attend. That will help us get you the best answer that we can and that we know as of today. And finally, as we begin to answer questions, I can let you know that there are some questions that we do not yet have the answers to. We are working tirelessly to find those answers, to consult with the Department of Health, our BOCES, New York State, and our school personnel to keep everyone safe. As soon as we have this information for questions that we may not yet know the answers to, we will continually update our school district media resources, our website, and our Facebook page to alert the community that things have changed and have continued to evolve. So as we begin and I turn it over to Dr. Beeler, I would like to thank our community for your patience, your engagement, and your trust. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Beeler.
Thank you, Mr. Bridenstine, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for taking time out of your day to hear where we are with the plan at this point in time, as well as provide us with questions which will help us to refine the plan moving forward. You've heard probably from other districts and newscasts that plans are fluid. And what we mean by that is that they're going to change. We have our plan substantially complete, meaning much of the safety precautions that are going to be put in place are there. Some details are still being refined. And when we talk about details, I'm talking about things like exactly what time students will be reporting to school, exactly what time the day will end. There are a lot of variables that are influencing that right now, including collaborating and working with our associations, our labor units, so that's the Teachers Association, support staff. There are contract obligations that the district has to follow with regard to start times and end times. All of those organizations have been exceptionally helpful. I can tell you that we are meeting at this point on a daily basis with the executive council of, or with at least the leadership from our Teachers Association, so that we can ensure that we are executing a plan and putting a plan in place that is fair across the board. The goal for today is to answer questions from the community. In a couple moments, I'm going to go through a little bit of where we are right now, but there will be questions, as Mr. Bridenstine stated, that we're not going to be able to answer. And those are the questions we're really looking for, because we're not going to pretend that we have thought of absolutely everything. We need the input from the community to refine our plan and build it better. So quickly, a little bit about where we are at. We started phase 1 of our reopening plan in late May and June. Phase 1 was simply what we needed to do to safely bring adults back into the workplace. A lot of work has been done by adults over the summer, from cleaners to our administrative staff, to buildings and grounds, to transportation. A lot happens over the summer, and we needed to ensure that we had safety precautions in place for our adult staff, just the same way that we need to do that for our students. We then progressed to what we're referring to as phase 2, and that is, what is it going to look like when we have students on campus? And I will tell you, to this point in time, we have requested surveys from the parents, the students in our community. We've actually put out 2 surveys. We had 1 specific staff survey. We've held 3 district Zoom meetings, varied by building and then by the district. So actually, I guess that's 4. We have also had 9 building-specific Zoom meetings up to this point with parents and staff members. We held a public hearing about 2 weeks ago of where the plan is, so that we could talk a little bit about the philosophy of coming back. And currently, our plan is available online, as it is right now, for public comment. So before I go too much further, I just want to ensure that everyone sees that we are being as transparent as completely possible. And I'm just going to share my screen and show you where you can find information that we may speak of quickly today, but you'd like to have more input or more detailed information. So right on our webpage, let's see here. This is the front page of our website. If you look down 1 click away on the left there, you'll see district reopening. If you click that link, you will be taken to, there it is, a sort of a cover page for where we are right now. On the left-hand side of this, you'll see our current plan that you can download. You'll see where you can provide feedback on that, and we respond to that feedback daily. You will also see our current work in progress along the left side, and then the future work, which is work that we know we need to do and that we are in the process of scheduling and getting done. You'll also see right here our philosophy. And I just want to reiterate very clearly for everyone that we are taking this exceptionally seriously. So our statement, which we have stated from day 1, is simply, if the district cannot open our buildings to students and staff safely, we will not open our buildings. Plain and simple. Below that, you'll see a bit of our educational philosophy. And this was gathered with input and collaboration from staff members, parents, as well as from students and advisement from our school board. The first thing that we are going to do is prioritize the requests of parents and guardians. And those requests are coming in across the board. Everything from 100% e-learning to, I want my student in school as much as possible. We will do everything we can to individually accommodate each of those requests. We are going to focus on e-learning. We anticipate that e-learning is going to need to occur at one point in time throughout the fall and throughout the year. And when I say e-learning, I'm talking about remote learning. So that's electronically based instruction. You will see a focus on that for our higher level students. So that would be for students in grades 6 through 12. And then as we begin to phase students back in, our focus will be on, for our 5th graders and younger, bringing them on safely and securely, because in all reality, we know that e-learning, while there are a lot of advancements our teachers have made in the delivery through e-learning, for a 1st grader or a 2nd grader, we simply can't replace that face-to-face instruction. The other thing that we're focusing on is the social and emotional well-being of our students and our staff. We're going to come back, and school as we knew it is no longer going to be a reality. It will be significantly different. And that alone will cause significant amount of stress. So we will ensure that we are monitoring the social and emotional well-being, not only of our students, but of our staff as well. And then our intent is to return students on a gradual spectrum. Those students who wish to stay on remote or e-learning can do so if they are successful. And we found in the spring that many of our students were exceptionally successful with e-learning as the primary, well, at that point in time, the only form of instruction. We also found that there were many students who it didn't work for. We've made improvements to our e-learning delivery model, But at the same time, we realize that there are students who will need to come to campus for one thing or another. And while we're focusing on e-learning at the secondary level, it may very well become a reality that after a week, a freshman is not successful in his algebra class, no matter what he does through an e-learning model. We will make arrangements to bring that student onto campus for face-to-face instruction in one form or another. It may not be for the entire day, because it may not need to be for the entire day. It may need to be for an hour every other day. We will accommodate that. We will work with the parents or guardians. We will work with the student, and we, to the greatest extent, will provide as much transportation as possible. You'll also find on this page frequently asked questions. I'll direct you to the very first question, which is quite simply, that is my personal, I hesitate to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. That's my personal cell phone number. If you have a question, if you have a concern, call it. I would much rather be able to answer that question for you or hear a concern that you have that we may not have addressed and be able to deal with that immediately so that we can ensure the safety and efficiency of all of our students and staff. You'll also find several other frequently asked questions. One that I have received probably hourly every day since the governor announced it on Monday is, did you submit a plan or not? What's the story? I saw it on the news. I can assure you that we submitted our safety plan to the New York State Education Department by the required deadline. It was very frustrating to see that the governor had us, as well as about 20% of the other districts across New York State, identified as not submitting a plan. We did submit our plan to the State Education Department. I will tell you that the exact same plan on the exact same day had to be submitted to the Department of Health through an alternate two-step process. There was a lack of communication on that process, and the Department of Health did not receive ours in a timely manner. It has subsequently been fixed, and that's that. So a couple other questions that you can see there as far as, you know, things about technology, food, when will the plan be finalized? There's also a button at the bottom where more questions can be, will be found. I am going to share with you that, you know, if there are questions that should be on here today, all of those will be on our frequently asked questions page, which will also include questions that we do not have an opportunity to address today, or quite frankly, if we don't have an answer to. We will end today's session at 3 o'clock. Just simply for scheduling purposes. There are 2 more sessions that are also available, and you can see those as we scroll down here. Scheduled for Monday, August 17th. So next Monday at 4 and then Wednesday at 7. We did our best to run, you know, a spectrum of times so that it can accommodate people's work schedules. There is also other required information that we need to share. One of the questions that we have been asked, which is relatively new for the district, up to about 10 days ago, contact tracing was exclusively done by counties. We, as a school district, now need to be performing contact tracing as well. Mr. Ray Haley, who's our safety and security coordinator, is designated as the district contact tracer. He will be working with the county should we have concerns or an actual case for COVID-19. Additionally, the question about testing for students and employees, I'll just put this out right here because I'm sure that's one of the questions on people's mind. I'll go over in a moment the screening process, which is separate than the actual testing. The medical testing process, and I'll have Mr. Bridenstine expand on this a little bit more, as it says, we're working through a relationship that we already have with telemed mobile medicine for testing. It is not, at this point in time, our intention to test all students or all staff. We don't have that capability. And at this point in time, I'll turn it over to Mr. Bridenstine, who has a little bit more detailed information.
Thank you, Dr. Beeler. The question from a prospect and Seneca parent, as well as a second Seneca parent, also applies to the high school and our preschool staff and our preschool students' families and our Salamanca Warrior staff. And the question is, will we require COVID testing before children are allowed back in school? And the answer is no. There is no reason to put a child or an individual through COVID testing unless they are symptomatic and are displaying symptoms or under order by the county to receive COVID testing for the virus. We are expanding our relationship with Telemobile Medicine, a firm that we've been a partner with since January before the virus hit, to provide in-district screenings for strep and things of that nature, and are working with them to expand this opportunity to do on-site testing for students. That is still a work in progress, and once that is established, that mechanism can also be utilized to test staff. So that's developing, and we hope to have that resolved within the next week to 10 days to finalize that process. But there is not a requirement to be COVID tested before a child or a staff member returns to school unless otherwise ordered by the county. And that is different than the screening mechanisms, which I'll turn it over to Dr. Beeler to briefly outline the screenings that will occur daily for students and staff and any visitors.
Thank you. So just to make sure we're on the same page, a test is a medical test which determines if a student or an individual has the COVID virus. That is significantly different than general screening, which we are required to do for anyone, and we are requiring anyone who enters our building to go through a general health screening. We've put this in place for the current staff that has been on site for about 6 to 7 weeks. They need to fill out an online survey which identifies, have they taken their temperature? Do they have a fever? Have they traveled to any of the travel advisory states? Or do they have any of the symptoms of COVID-19? If they indicate yes, those individuals do not report to the school and are not permitted in until they're cleared by their doctor. In all essence, at this point in time, we're not a doctor's office. We're not equipped, although apparently we're going to need to become equipped with the process for testing. We are capable of doing screening. So when students, and if students come onto campus, that same process will go through for all of them. They will be told in the morning, their parents, if they follow any of these criteria, if they have COVID symptoms, if they have traveled, say over the weekend to a travel advisory state, they are not permitted to come to school. So the question then is, okay, so what's the deal with the temperature? We have purchased 7 thermal cameras that can scan temperatures and take temperature readings of individual students as they progress through our single point of entry that reads the temperature. If it is currently set, and there's a lot of questions over what's the temperature, we have established our parameters, which is 0.4 degrees below what the Department of Health has indicated. The health department says 100.4 degrees. Our metric is going to be 100 degrees. Now, what happens if a student walks in through the door and has a temperature of 100 degrees? Well, they may be sick, or they're a kid. They may have just run from the bus into school because everyone knows kids are excited to get to school. So they might be a little bit overheated. In that particular case, they will be separated from the other students. They'll give a few moments to cool down, and we'll take their temperature again with another thermometer. In the event that they do have a fever, or perhaps they have other symptoms of COVID, we have designated isolation rooms at each one of the campuses. They will go to the designated isolation room and be assessed by one of our school nurses. And our school nurse has all of the PPE equipment that are required, including masks, gloves, gowns, actually, so that they can do a further assessment. If that happens, we're saying right now we will contact the parents so to make sure that they all understand this process. It will not be confrontational. We're not tackling kids at the door who happen to have a bit of a temperature and then sending them. It just sounds terrible, right? We're sending them to the isolation room. We're just going to take them to the nurse's office or another designated space for further evaluation. If everything checks out, they just go right back to class and everything's, honky-dory, so to speak. So that screening process will occur for every single person that comes into the building on a daily basis. One of the questions that has come up, okay, I have a cough. I get a cough every year because of the allergies. Am I allowed to come to school? Yes, you are allowed to come to school if you have general, if you are in good health, do not exhibit the symptoms of COVID. And yes, it appears as though pretty close to everything is a symptom of COVID, but you have to have multiple symptoms. We need to have some form of sort of common sense here. If I have allergies in the fall or seasonal allergies and I have it every year and I don't have a fever or any other symptoms, can I come to school? Yes, you can come to school. If you one of the key metrics for us is a fever. A fever is a biological response to some form of, I'm going to say assault, but something that is, it could be an ear infection, it could be a throat infection, it could be any number of things. The state guidelines have been expanded from and this isn't a change really, if you have a fever and a kid is sent home with a fever, they couldn't return to school without that fever being gone for 24 hours. And in all reality, we're still following that. That's nothing really there has changed, except for the fact that we're doing a better job of screening our students and staff. Although I will share with you that time has been expanded from 24 hours to 72 hours. So if a student has a fever for whatever reason they have a fever, they will not be allowed to be back in school for 72 hours. And that is COVID or ear infection or any reason whatsoever. And that will continue likely, for good, post-pandemic. Let's see, what other questions? I want to make sure, and it looks as though we've got a couple questions
The
here.
next two questions, Dr. Beeler, are regarding how e-learning will be structured specifically with high school students. Their child, I will try not to use identifiable characteristics, but their child does much better in a classroom if he was able to have class lessons, even if through Zoom calls or YouTube videos, to be more like in-class learning. And then a second high school parent indicates that how long will e-learning continue? Their daughter does much better when not completely on remote.
Terrific. So let me just address a couple things there. Our goal is to safely bring students back to campus as much as possible. That's our long-term goal. But at the same time, the consequences of making a mistake, of moving too quickly, are very significant. We have staff that is coming from quite literally all over Western New York. And our concern, just as much for our students, is staff to staff transmission and staff to student transmission. And I'm going to, before I turn over the e-learning piece, I just want to talk about the first week of school and why we have structured it that way. One thing that we have learned being on campus as adults in the workplace is that the new rules that we have to follow are exceptionally cumbersome. And there is an awful lot of opportunity to make mistakes. Let me give you an example. I'm at my desk and I have an IT problem. What typically happens? The IT support comes in, sits down at my computer, miraculously with the 2 keystrokes fixes my problem that has been vexing me for 4 hours and then walks away. Well, we have a whole series of problems there, right? They've come into my space. They have to have their mask on. They touched my keyboard after I touched it. How do I clean my keyboard? So that's a simple process that happens throughout the day, all day. I leave my classroom and the simple process of signing in each day so that we can do contact tracing. That pen that people pick up, that's a high frequency item. How are we cleaning that pen? These are all things that have come and arisen as we as the working adults have discovered. We need at the very least 1 week of working in the building with adults to understand what these rules are, be trained appropriately, and sort of institutionalize them and have them become part of our processes. After that week, we will start to bring some students back onto campus. When I talk about training that's going to be required for our staff as well as our students, we're talking about appropriate respiratory hygiene. How do we cough now? What is the social distancing guidelines that we have? The mask I'll talk with it about at another moment, but there are a tremendous number of rules around the mask. How do you put it on? How do you take it off? What do you do with it when you take it off? How do you clean it on a nightly basis? When do you wear it? All of those are outlined in the plan, but they're practices that we need to have and put in place and need to be familiar with. Our concern is that it only takes one time where a teacher might be behind a barrier, takes their mask off, walks around to answer a question, and now we have a potential for cross-contamination of no fault, no ill intent, but it happens in a moment. So we need to put these pieces in place and practice this before we can have students on campus, because having students on campus is going to be, in all honesty, exceptionally complex. From the side of the hall that they walk down, to what they touch, how close they can be to other people, how they use the restroom. All of that is detailed. We have processes in place for it, cleaning procedures in place. But I don't know, quite frankly, how a district could welcome a large group of students after only having their teachers on campus for a day or two. To me, and I'm not saying that they're being unsafe, we're not at a point where we can do that as adults and put all of those pieces in place. And we recognize that we're going to need time for that. So let me turn over the question specifically with regarding to e-learning. I also see that we have somebody who has moved here from Gowanda, so I just want to say welcome to Salamanca. But I'm going to ask Mr. Siebert, who's our high school principal, to talk a little bit about how e-learning will look at the high school level.
Dr. Beeler. So for e-learning for the high school, the expectation is that teachers will be uploading lessons to class pages each day. The lessons are typically supposed to be between 20 minutes and a half hour long. Aside from that, teachers will also have office hours set up through Zoom meetings. And these Zoom meetings then will allow the students access to the teachers for individualized help with whatever the lesson had to do with. Those office hours, again, will be about 45 minutes. They'll be scattered throughout the day to give students ample time to access whatever needs they may have. The other question I believe dealt with is the in-person or when can students come back in. As far as the hybrid method goes of actually being in a classroom, that's going to be dependent on how everything else rolls out. I am an advocate for in-person learning when it is safe, but we need to make sure that it's safe first. There will be e-learning hubs that are created inside the high school in larger areas where we can socially distance students, making sure that they're following the rules, and we'll provide support in those areas for students that do need to be here. And there's a variety of reasons for certain students to be here, from just the extra support that's needed to lack of internet services to whatever. So I guess it's going to be kind of an individualized basis based on what students and the families need.
Mr. Siebert, there's a question from a Seneca and Prospect parent. Will staff and students have to be quarantined for 14 days before coming into the building? No, they will not, unless they're under order by the county or the state health department to quarantine.
Let's see. So one of the next questions is, will students be in classrooms or gyms and on computers? So one of the fortunate advantages of having a student in Salamanca is that all of our students have one-to-one devices, meaning they, particularly from grades 3 through 12 specifically, have laptop devices. And those devices will be utilized with them if they are on campus or obviously at home. We have processes in place. If the keyboard does need to be shared, we'll have covers for those and cleaning procedures. But our intent is to eliminate the sharing essentially of keyboards, which would occur in a class transition where one student's come in and use the same computers. The ability for us to maintain that one-to-one device protocol that we have will eliminate a lot of that potential for cross-contamination. Phys ed and some of the other special areas, we're still working with our instructors there as far as what that will exactly look like. You can imagine that there are some complications that come up when we talk about phys ed class. I don't have a good answer for you with regard to that. I know our physical education staff is looking at how they can appropriately ensure our students are safe, but still provide students with fitness and physical education.
There's also a question from a parent regarding their child's IEP needs for
Right.
speech and physical and occupational therapy, as well as transitioning from a new district. Welcome from Gwanda. The short answer to this is students with individual needs mandated by IEPs or preschool IEPs. The best, shortest answer is that the Pupil Services Office will be contacting you. Those are individual service programs, and rather than talk about them publicly, we will make sure that there's a contact with you to outline how that's going to look. But we will be providing those services in a combination of formats, either through telemobile medicine, through teletherapy, thank you. Teletherapies, or if the student is in person or through Zoom. So we will be making sure that we provide the IEP services as required from the individual plans. And if there are any specific questions about individual programs for students with disabilities, Mrs. Dudek and Mr. Parisi in the Pupil Services offices, I'm sure will be happy to take your individual questions or have probably already contacted you. The next question is there a 5-day option for attendance? I'm going to make the assumption that that means a child attending Salamanca schools for 5 days. And there's a couple of parts to that. I'll start with the high school vocational students and students with disabilities attending BOCES or agency programs. It's our understanding from those organizations, BOCES and other special education providers that we contract with, that those students will have an option of 5-day programming. Our vocational students will have the opportunity to attend their vocational career tech ed programs 5 days a week for the full program, and BOCES and the agencies have assured us that they will be following all the required protocols mandated by the state. And with regard to the 5-day programming option for our students on our campuses, I'll turn that portion over to Dr. Buehler.
Great, thank you. He takes all the easy ones and then throws me the hard ones. So we do not anticipate having students on campus 5 days a week, at least not until we get everything else sort of smoothed out and operational. That would be our goal, particularly at the younger level grades. Let me just share how we're making some of the decisions moving forward. I know that the Pupil Services, so the special education department, has contacted every single one of the families with an IEP. I'm going to actually try to make sure that that's a correct statement. Is that right?
The Pupil Service Office has contacted all families with students that are in the significant programs, 1211 and out of district locations. All other families were contacted by the buildings themselves regarding the programs and services that are offered within those buildings. If you have services that are not handled through a 1211, an 811, a 611, or an out-of-district site, please feel free to give us a call at 716-945-5142 with your individual questions.
All right, terrific. And that'll lead me into perhaps answering a couple other questions that I see are starting to populate. If I go back to that page that I showed, the web page, the work in progress is that every one of our households with students that attend Salamanca schools have been contacted or are in the process of being contacted. And there's a series of questions that are actually being asked of those families, including, do you wish to participate in 100% e-learning? Do you wish to participate in our hybrid option right now? Do you have sufficient internet resources at home? If you are choosing the e-learning option, do you need food services? Meaning, can you get to a location where you can pick up food? If not, and if so, what location works best for you? Because we will continue to provide food in the form of lunches on a daily basis to our community or to our students out in the community, whether they are in school or 100% e-learning. And there's several other questions. Those answers are all being utilized to develop the program and build sort of some class lists as we start to move forward. I will share with you that as of a few hours ago, we have 56% of our families who are electing 100% e-learning. So what does that mean? Okay, so at the most across the district, we're talking about half of the students if we were to begin to have students on campus on a daily basis. We're not prepared to do that at this point in time. We also want to make sure that people are clear that, if yesterday when Seneca Intermediate called and you said, yep, we're going to do 100% e-learning, and then you're more comfortable come 3 or 4 weeks from now, and you want to send your student to a hybrid model, which is what Seneca and Prospect are looking at. So that would be student attendance on Monday and Tuesday, cleaning on Wednesday, and then group B students on Thursday and Friday. You can do that. This isn't, like a, timeshare commitment that once you sign the contract and say we're going to do this, you're stuck in it for eternity. Our goal is to accommodate the needs of our students and recognize the needs of the parents. If there's a parent who says, I'm going to be 100% e-learning, and then a work change requires them or necessitates them to have students on campus as much as possible, sure, we're looking to be able to make longer term decisions and hopefully in sort of increments of 10 weeks. But if something comes up and they need to send students, we will make sure that we accommodate that. I just want to make sure that we all understand there's a significant amount of logistics that has to go into that. Reassigning to classroom groups, transportation, food. So if you say I'm going to be e-learning and we're going, everything's hunky great, and it's Friday, and you say, oh my goodness, I need to switch to in-person instruction. The reality is it's going to take us about 10 school days to put everything in place. So we're not able to make these transitions sort of overnight. We may get better at it and we may be able to reduce that time, but I just need parents to understand that once we, sort of establish a class, our goal and our principals' goals and our teachers' goals, even if we're in the e-learning environment, is to create and foster a sense of community in that environment. So classes will be consistent so that, when we practice some of the better instructional strategies that we have, we might have a session online of whole group instruction. We have enhanced capabilities now with our technology. We can break that group of 10 or 15 students into 5 small groups. They could have a task to work on electronically in breakout rooms. They can collaborate with their peers and then come back to answer questions collectively. We want to have our students feel that sense of community, even though they may be stuck at home. I'm certain that Ms. Pavone would like to expand on that. So I'm going to give her the opportunity to perhaps talk a little bit about what the hybrid looks like and e-learning at Prospect Elementary School.
Prospect Elementary and Seneca is mirroring quite a bit of what we're doing. E-learning and hybrid learning will look somewhat similar in the sense that students will be going to class pages to view a lesson and then have follow-up activities on those lessons. We are trying to keep a very structured schedule so it can work with families, but students would be attending Zooms for ELA, math, science, and social studies. But we have varied times available to families to choose from so that it can match your family schedule. One of the things we heard over and over is my 2 kids can't be on Zoom at the same time. So we're trying to maximize those schedules to match up so that kids can attend an ELA, a math, and a science social studies Zoom every day. So I'll give an example. Your child may go to math at 9 o'clock every day and then go to ELA at 10:30 and then maybe a 1:15 science social studies time. You may not have the same teacher for all those sessions, but you would go to that time every single day so you would get comfortable with that group of students. Class pages will be where we're housing all of our lesson material. And then the Zoom sessions would be to reinforce the learning from those lessons and provide an opportunity for your child to get feedback, answer questions, and get some of their work completed. Hybrid model students will also be receiving the same lessons with adult support. We're going to continue guided reading with our small groups at different times throughout the day. March through June, we did an excellent job with our learning packets, but we do know we need to make it more structured and routine for the students. But we also have to acknowledge that they can't be on Zoom all day. So this gives flexibility to Zoom schedule, but also ensures that our students are attending on a daily basis. We're also going to have a homeroom huddle every morning for your students to build relationships with their teacher, do a class meeting, and touch base with each other before the day begins. The teacher at that point will go over what the schedule is for the day, get to know your child better, share some fun stories and activities just to start the day on a positive note. We will be taking attendance during those times. So if we don't see you at a homeroom huddle, we'll be calling you up just to see everything okay, what can we do to support you, and still continue to build those relationships between teachers and students, and really using class pages as that platform.
There are a couple of questions also about the e-learning structure at Seneca, and I'll turn it over to our newest administrator and principal at Seneca Intermediate, Mrs. Beaver.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mrs. Beaver. So while Seneca is going to have e-learning from the start of September through the 11th, we're hoping around September 14th, we can begin to start phasing in our students towards a hybrid model. It's very similar to Prospect in that we are going to have class pages be our primary focus point for all students, so they can go there and get all of their ELA, math, science, and social studies. We are going to work very hard together as a team at Seneca to make sure that we are unified and that we're all on the same page and that we're working to meet all students' needs. Exactly what the expectations will be during e-learning, that will be identified clearly, and there will be no surprises coming. You'll know exactly what time your classes will be. There will be Zoom support, office hours. Also, like Mr. Siebert said, we'll have those e-learning hubs so your child can get extra support if needed. Ultimately, we would like to start bringing students back and do the in-person learning when it's safe and we can do that. And so we'll go on those AA, BB days, cohorts of students learning together in one classroom throughout the day. We would like to provide students that are home with an opportunity to Zoom into the classroom and be a part of their peers' learning as well. But just, at Seneca, we're just going to do the best that we can to accommodate the needs of everyone in the building and work together to do it safely and meet everyone's needs.
Mrs. Beaver, we're going to try to go through a lightning round. There's a number of questions that are fairly straightforward. And so I'm going to, Dr. Beal and I are going to try to check off a number of them. The first is staff allergies. Do staff need to report to our nurses and administrators if they have allergies? No, we don't need your detailed health history or records. If you are feeling ill, we encourage everyone to let us know, and the nurses know, but we don't need to know if you're allergic to pollen or hay.
Lockers, I'll take lockers. There's a question about will students utilize lockers? The goal here is to minimize locker time. So students will have the opportunity to have, if they're on campus, they'll have backpacks like we used to. There'll be fewer students, but backpacks will be utilized for students who have the ability, especially for our sort of intermediate and high school students. And then there will be other spaces where students can store their instructional materials.
Computers, one-to-one. We are a one-to-one district. All of our students will be receiving devices. For those students who are attending summer programs, which a number are, we need those devices back, and so that we can re-image them and get them ready for the start of school in September. But everyone will be receiving a one-to-one device, and our IT department has been working incredibly long hours to make that a reality, as well as updating our infrastructure and our internet highway so students can use those.
Ventilation, I'll take ventilation.
Oh,
So A question came up with regard to will schools put ventilation systems in similar to the systems that are required, or I don't know if they're required in shopping malls. Schools have always had a much higher standard for ventilation in the school classrooms, and that is based upon the rate or frequency, not necessarily of filtering the air, but of actually turning over the air in the room. So that is how many times per hour is the air in the room completely replaced. We have univents, which are vents that are, if you look outside, they're connected to the outside. Fresh air is brought in through those devices, circulates through the room, expelled back out so that there's a hot, consistent and regular turnover. At Prospect, those have just been replaced, and we'll hear a round of cheer in a moment, to enable air conditioning to be possible in all of the rooms there. And those meet the latest requirements for air rate turnover. So that sort of mitigates the need for filtering. Although all of our ventilation units do have filters on them, the requirement that we have is not necessarily to have some form of HEPA filtration in them, but to literally take the air that's in the room and replace it with fresh air from outside. You want athletics?
I'll take athletics and Regents exams. Right now, there is no information about Regents exams for January or June or next August. I'm told that the Board of Regents will be addressing this at their possible August meeting or September. So no change. They're still scheduled at this point in time, and we'll update as soon as that comes. With regard to athletics, the New York State Public High School Athletic Association is the governing body for high school athletics in New York State. They have issued guidance approximately 8 weeks ago that said the fall seasons will be condensed and collapsed and cannot start until September 21st. It's our belief as of today in this meeting that that is still the benchmark date. And if athletics will continue, we are moving forward with the understanding that they will be available until further guidance occurs saying contrary. If that does occur and athletics for the fall are canceled, the guidance currently is all sports seasons, fall, winter, and spring, will be consolidated into 3 super condensed athletic seasons beginning in January. For us, with construction on Vets Park and our fields, that actually works to our advantage. But right now, we'll wait and see. And as soon as that information comes out from Public High School Athletic Association, we will update.
Terrific. That was 2. So I will take Connor Klusek's question with regard to students who might be up late and sleep in past normal school hours. Okay, so that really isn't that much different than whether kids are in school or out of school. One of the things that we are working with the STA, we initiated that conversation last week, and STA is favorably looking at how we can stagger some of the start times for students and staff. We recognize, and we have said, that there are not many high school students who are functional at 6:30 in the morning. Some may argue that that is just pervasive throughout the day, but it's at least worse at the elementary or early grade or times. So what can we do to accommodate that, as well as other needs that the families might have? So, you know, if they need to work with students in the morning to feed them breakfast, their younger siblings, how can we work with them? We're working with the Teachers Association to enable sort of a later start time for some teachers. The other piece of this is if we have students and teachers on campus, we can't all simply show up at the same time. We can't have hundreds of people come into the building all at 7:45. So we're working with them to produce a staggered start time. That would be a staggered end time. Additionally, we're going to have tutoring in place that is available after hours, so that if I have a high school student who, you know, does their asynchronous or not face-to-face e-learning, and they watch that flipped video at 2:30 in the afternoon, and then are much more comfortable working at, say, 5 o'clock in the evening on their work and get stumped, or if it was like my kids at 10 o'clock at night and they need some help, we will have tutors that it will be available electronically to assist them after hours at a time that makes sense for our high school students. And those tutors will be available whether students are here or whether they are taking solely e-learning online. Coupled with that is a question about accountability for our students. We were very proud of the accountability measures that we put in place for our students. We believe we did a better job than many other districts, but at the same time, we know that we can do better. And when I talk about accountability, I'm referring to the basic performance expectations for students who are solely online. So there's a couple things that I want to talk about. One, our staff, particularly our teachers and parents and students, have been working on a rubric which will outline what the guidelines are and expectations are when teachers, students are working online. You know, is it when they enter a simple Zoom session, how do they enter appropriately? And these are just generally, now they're life skills apparently that everybody needs to know. You know, can't tell you how many times I've heard you're on mute, right? So, you know, all of these pieces which are new to us now become something that we need to work with our students and teach. You know, what should they look like? Did they have paper and pen available? How do they communicate verbally? How do they indicate that they need to speak to someone? How is their work going to be collected and assessed? So Zoom is one portion of e-learning. The other portion is Class Pages. Now, Class Pages is what we refer to as our learning management solution or a tool. So Class Pages is tied in directly with our student management system. It is secure so that only our students and their parents have access to it. And this is an environment where work can be shared back and forth electronically. We have added a significant amount of functionality and professional development for our teachers over the summer so that assignments can be done on the devices, corrected on the devices, feedback can be given in a much more expeditious manner. So that concept or belief that, you know, a student is sitting watching a 30-minute Zoom lesson and that's it, that's not how we're teaching through e-learning. There are pauses and stops through the e-learning. Students will answer questions. Students will have work. They will have written work that will be submitted and graded all electronically online. Our focus will be on e-learning, and we have expanded our repertoire of electronic tools, and we've invested a significant amount of professional development for our teachers. That professional development is going to continue throughout the fall. One of our concerns is how do we get students engaged in learning online? A lot of work has been done with that. We're contracting with a couple consultants that are nationally recognized for their work in that, and they'll be working with our teachers to ensure that it's not simply a video that students are watching. They are actually engaged in the learning process while performing that learning online.
Okay. Nope. I'm
All right,
sorry.
fine, go
Nope,
ahead.
Nope.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Two quick summaries of previous answers. We are not requiring students or staff to be COVID tested. That is something that will occur by an order of the county or a medical provider. If an individual is symptomatic, we will be working to getting the option to do testing on site here with a third-party vendor that we are partnered with. The question also came up about students attending BOCES for vocational again. Those students will have access to those programs to help them meet their graduation requirements.
One question I'll just expand on from Class Pages. Yes, parents will be able to see everything that is on Class Pages. Another thing that we're adding will be sort of I don't want to say 24-hour, but a pretty long hour help desk. And that help desk will be available from our IT staff as well as some of our school-related personnel that will help students who are having technical difficulties. You've heard us say that we're working with, e-learning is going to be a focus. Well, that's all well and good if it works. And there are many obstacles to getting it to work. We anticipate having both phone service as well as electronic service, where we will be able to have a student get online. They'll pick up the phone, call an actual human being. We now can share our devices electronically and remotely. If something needs to be repaired on that student's end, we can do so. If it's a user issue of training, we will work with that student. If it's a parent who has a question, I need to get into my kids' Class Pages, I don't think they're doing their work, we will have a person that will help you with that. That will not only be for the first week, but we anticipate that lasting the entirety of our e-learning process. So support will be significantly better than it was in the spring. Although that's not to say we didn't do a good job in the spring. We're simply expanding that. There's a whole slew of technology ones. You want me to hit that? All right. So will students get computers? Yes. Will students have Wi-Fi devices that we're going to distribute if they need Wi-Fi devices at home? Yes. Will we help them set them up? Yes. Will we, if there are locations where families do not have internet and they do not have cell phone coverage, which means our Wi-Fi hotspots do not work, are we still going to have buses parked around town or other venues or spaces where they can gain internet access? Yes, we're actually expanding that internet sort of service that we provide around town and around the district, I should say, so that if I don't have internet at home, if I don't have cell phone coverage, how do I get my electronic resources? There's going to be one of two ways. We will still transfer things electronically with a USB drive, meaning we'll coordinate the collection of work, so to speak, on a weekly basis on a USB drive. We will drop that off at your house and pick up the previous week's worth of work. We will also have throughout the city hotspots or mobile internet where people can go. So, excuse me, I can take my car, park it next to the bus. We're working to expand that. I don't want to commit our IT department to things just yet, but I anticipate that they'll have some further announcements over how we're expanding internet access throughout the entire district. I think that was all the tech questions. I'm just going to hit on Regents again. While we don't know if there are going to be Regents exams, the entire Regents curriculum and all of the curriculum is expected to be taught. Are we likely to not do some of perhaps the extra things that we had done because, we're not going to be as efficient as we have been in the past, and that would be foolish to think we are. We are going to focus on power standards and what the students absolutely essential need to know and be able to do. But particularly for our advanced students who might have concerns about, things like SAT prep, getting into college, advanced coursework through our partnerships with colleges, we are going to continue to offer those courses, and the expectations will not waver from the high standards that we've had in the past.
Two quick questions that I can answer fairly briefly regarding the best way to enroll a new student is to call the Pupil Services Office. Mrs. Dudek, can you give us that number one more time?
Sure. The easiest way actually to do a new enrollment is to go to the district website, and right on the main page, there is a tab that says new student registration. That will allow you to begin step one of the process, fill in the information that will come directly to me, and then you will receive a call from me to go into step 2 and step 3 and what that looks like. If you'd like to call and speak to someone directly, please call 716-945-2400, and you can leave a message at extension 4050.
Thank you, Mrs. Dudek. The other question is regarding staff health concerns. I will be sending out communication. We did have a conversation with the Teachers Association today and the other association presidents. I'll be sending out some documentation to individual staff members via a district-wide email with that outlining that process for individuals who have specific health concerns. Loosely, we will follow the guidance from the State Department of Health and the Centers for Disease Control, identifying those individuals who have health risks as employees.
Let's see. So masks, I don't know as though we've sufficiently addressed that particular question. In other words, when will they wear them? How will they get them? Whatnot. So we know that masks are an effective appliance, device, whatever, thing to reduce the transmission of fancy as particulate matter, but really spit, all right, that has the virus in it. When will students need to wear them? Students will need to wear them whenever they cannot maintain a 6-foot social distance. So that would include times in the hall, when they're on the bus, when they're in class and moving about. But if they are in the classroom with social distancing, so in other words, desks or tables at least 6 feet apart, they will be able to remove the mask during the day. We are also purchasing the barrier devices, which are the transparent, for the lack of a better term, I'll just say plexiglass. They're not plexiglass because they meet specific fire requirements, but if we think about plexiglass barriers, we are purchasing those for use in the classroom so that a student can take their mask off, be comfortable, still have vision around them and be able to see and collaborate with other individuals and talk without having a mask on all the time. So what about masks? Will students be able to bring their own mask into school? Yes. It needs to meet the basic requirements of covering the mouth and nose at the same time and being secured and being generally clean. The district will also be providing masks, and we're at this point planning to have masks available for students at bus stops and when they enter the buildings. So we have 4 very different size of masks to fit the child appropriately. They will be at the bus, essentially the bus stop, but at the buses, students will pick up the mask as they enter the bus, wear it while they are on the bus and throughout the day. When they get off the bus at the end of the day, they will throw it into the used bin. We will follow the appropriate sanitizing and cleaning processes so that they can then pick up the mask the next day. The same thing or very similar process will be occurring at the schools. This way, there are high quality masks that we know are clean, that are available to all students and are sized appropriately. Do they have to wear those particular masks? No.
The other question that has come up is regarding the use of SAT, the college entrance exam. That is an issue I do not know. Mr. Siebert, do you have any information on SAT tests?
100%, we are still planning on offering them if they will be offered.
Okay. So
I
that
can add a
will
little
put,
bit more. Yeah,
Okay.
so I know that there are SATs being offered. I believe the first administration is late October. It's going to be a struggle because the volume of students has been reduced to 50%. So if there are, I'm just going to give you a heads up now, if there are individuals who have students who want to take the SAT, that's all really managed online. Our pupil services can help with that. But if I were you, I would get online now, find the location and secure one of the spots as soon as possible, because there's really, if we're only providing and the school board, not school board, what's the college board, thank you. If the college board is only providing half of the opportunities and we really have essentially a year and a half to make up, in all reality, it's likely to be a struggle to get in. So I would talk with your school counselor as soon as possible.
good answer. There's a question regarding busing and social distancing.
Great. So we're reducing the volume of students on the bus to 1/3 of capacity. So we anticipate about 20 to 22% or 20 to 22 students on a large 65 passenger bus. Those students, we will do our best to sort of keep together in one grouping. So this will be much more significantly important for Seneca and Prospect. We are hoping to be able to have buses match essentially the classes. So one of our goals is to keep students together so there is not a tremendous amount of student to student to student from multiple classrooms and the possible transmission that can occur there. So we're going to do our best to have Mrs. Smith's second grade class on day A on Monday all get picked up on the same bus, all come into the same classroom so that they're not wandering all through the hall, be taught, go through their day, get on that bus and be dropped off. There are a lot of variables that have to happen there. We do not want students on the buses for extended time periods. So what we need to do is collaborate. Right now, we're still in the process of identifying who to anticipate in school. We will then group them so that they are grouped appropriately educationally and then take a look at how we can group them by geographic location, which would therefore be the bus route.
There's a question about field trips from last year. I have a partial answer, but would just need a little bit more information which specific trip we're speaking about. The International Club was repositioned, and the individuals who paid for the international trip still have their money in their account. We did have 4 seniors who lost out, and the board amended policy so that we could temporarily take ownership of those international trips. For the seniors, it would have been out about $4,000 each. Those spots have been resold to individual students for that will be taking the trip that's planned for April of 21. The Washington trip, the senior class trip, I believe all of those funds were refunded and resubmitted to the students' accounts. And I believe the class of 2020 chose to donate those funds for a bench that will be positioned at some point in time in the future once construction is done. I'm not aware of any other field trips specifically, so if you want to provide a little bit more information, I can follow up on that for a specific trip that may have been paid and not reconciled.
We have a specific question about busing for students who go to the CTE Center or BOCES. Mr. Siebert, are you prepared to answer that one? In other words, will they get picked up at home, taken there, and then brought back home?
I'm working with the bus garage at this time. I've been in conversation with Bob Finch. We're trying to figure out the best way to do that. I'm not 100% sure right now whether they will be picked up at home and then taken directly there and dropped off at home, or whether we will bring them to a different location and pick them up there and then take them to BOCES.
The other addition to that is that BOCES has informed us that students in the vocational programs that are able to,
Thank you.
drive will be permitted to drive to the BOCES Vocational Center. They'll need to go through that process with the high school to make sure that they're authorized and eligible to drive. But there is some relief for students who are attending the vocational programs that will be able to drive.
So we have a question about the DC trip, specifically those 8th graders or current incoming 8th graders who work toward that in 7th grade. We don't have an answer for that one just yet. That sort of couples with the question about, is this going to be the way it is all year? I'll be honest with you, I certainly, while we're going to do a great job and everything will be marvelous, I certainly hope this isn't the way it's going to be all year. We want to get back to whatever the new normal is. I don't know if we're prepared to say the Washington, D.C. trip is not happening at this point in time. I'm optimistic that we will have a vaccine that will, hopefully eliminate a lot of the concerns that we do have. I think it's important to recognize that at this point in time, Cattaraugus County in particular is in a very good position with a number of cases that are currently active. As of about 5 minutes before this meeting started, there were 4 active cases in all of Cattaraugus County. So if we think about that, that's from Randolph to Springville, down to Olean, out to Gowanda. That's a very good thing. We want to ensure that it stays that way. We will continue to monitor that on a daily basis and take appropriate actions and precautions should that number increase. But I don't know, I'm sort of have my fingers crossed that, come January, February, we'll be able to return to a much more normal situation. But I also want to say, we just need to be prepared that if the school year starts and we're 2 weeks in and we cannot do this properly, if we have significant or any safety concerns across the board, we will stop school and continue to do what we need to do to make it better until we can bring students back on. We certainly do not, for anyone's planning purposes, work, family, home, want to have students on campus and then say the next day we're off campus and we're shut down. But we are prepared to do that and will do that if the safety does not look like it's where it needs to be.
Just as a follow-up, the clarification regarding the BOCES vocational transportation is a little bit, let me just clarify our response. If a student attends BOCES for a vocational program, will they have the ability to be dropped off at home after that, assuming to continue to do remote instruction? And I would say make sure that specific information is communicated to the high school guidance counselor and to the high school principal to make sure that scheduling works. Remote is an option in many capacities and many functions. Just let's make sure that we communicate that directly to the principal. There is one question that I have not yet heard in any capacity in any forum regarding the vaccine being mandatory. And I will say that's a great question that has not yet been asked in any form. And I will get back to the forum and to the conversation about that. So I won't weigh in on vaccine or not vaccine. I can say as of today, there is no vaccine. But we hope that science will catch up to the virus and provide us a multitude of options to keep people safe. And when that information is known, we will share that.
So here's a terrific question because we haven't said that yet. What is the exact date learning will begin? Do we have that date? We know the date. I don't want you to think we don't know it. I just don't have it in front of me and I don't want to say the wrong one. So one of the principals, thank you. September 1st, learning will occur at that point in time. I'd like to think learning is occurring all the time, but school learning will occur formally on September 1st. And as we said, for that first week, it will be through e-learning. So you'll be contacted about how to get devices ahead of time and what that will look like. But as we said, September 1st is the first date for e-learning.
Please.
For the high school grades 8 through 12, and I think for Seneca 6th and 7th, currently speaking, I talked to Mr. Miller, our tech person, and we believe that the devices will be ready to be shipped out to the houses with the buses, the way we did in the spring on August 26th and 27th. So we're expecting to have deliveries going to students on the 26th and 27th for the devices.
Please.
Prospect will also be getting iPads for our pre-K, K, and 1 students and laptops for our 2nd and 3rd graders. We are either going to do the delivery on the 26th or 27th or have a drive-through pickup. Along with their devices, they're going to get home-based learning materials that will include dry erase boards and markers, pencils, sharpeners, erasers, scissors, glue, to go along with some of the activities that will be coming home. Though everything will be based on class pages, we are still going to do bi-weekly packets because at that level, we still need some hands-on paper pencil activities for multiple reasons.
Terrific.
Mrs. Beaver.
So 6th and 7th graders will be having device delivery on the 26th and 27th. We would like to have a drive-through, or we've been calling it maybe a parking lot party for an orientation for our 3rd graders coming into 4th grade for a little orientation to Seneca building and to get to meet their teachers just so they feel a little more comfortable with the start of the school year. And we're possibly going to do that also with our 4th grade students going into 5th grade for this school year. More information on that is to come.
Thank you. There was a kind of a question that I just want to circle back to regarding both students transitioning from one model, completely e-learning, to hybrid, to all in person. And Dr. Beeler touched on that. And the short answer is, as this develops, please keep us in close contact with your needs directly to the building, to each of the school counselors and social workers assigned to the buildings for those weekly and, if necessary, daily wellness checks. As your circumstances change, we will pivot and evolve to help you in the fastest way possible that we can. Please understand that there will be some transition for that. And we will be committed to doing that as quickly and as expeditiously as we can. And the second is regarding the weekly schedules. Will parents know those weekly schedules in advance? And with that, I'll turn it over to the administrators, Dr. Beal and the principals, to maybe just kind of touch on what that weekly schedule might look like.
I am going to probably ask Ms. Pavone first, because there's no doubt that she's chomping at the bit to share the work that she's done. So go ahead.
So I know by this time we are typically excited to share our homerooms and celebrate who we have as our teacher and get our year ready for that. But this year we've been waiting for the survey results so that we can make sure your child is in a homeroom that will be online or hybrid. So once we know that, we will determine what the online and hybrid classrooms makeup is. For everyone that is solely e-learning, you will have a homeroom huddle that will be the same teacher every day, but dependent on what times work for you for ELA, math, science, or social studies, it may be a different teacher throughout the day, just to be able to match your schedule as a family better. But it would be the same teacher for guided reading that you have for homeroom huddle potentially. But we also look at this as an opportunity of being able to really match students by their strengths, interests, and learning styles in a different way too. As grade levels, we've been talking the past couple of days about the idea that your child is a second grader. All the second grade teachers are their teacher. And so we're trying to develop things so that you can get to know every teacher at the second grade level or whatever level your child is in, so that your child is making connections with all of the second grade teachers in the reality that they could learn from all of them at any given. But the homeroom huddle will be with the same person, and dependent on what schedule choices you make, it may be different teachers. Did I clarify that enough?
I think so.
Good.
All right, terrific. Let's see. I'm going to answer one, and then I'm going to ask Mr. Siebert. Let's see. So a question here, if a student is ill, will they be able to attend e-learning on that particular day? Yes, absolutely. I think once we start utilizing class pages and see some of the opportunities that they provide, that it provides for learning, you know, this will be one of those things that probably we carry on well after we're back to normal, so to speak, is that, you know, for students who are out for 2, 3, 4 days, trying to catch up is a challenge. And then realistically sending work home, while that sounds great, isn't always the best option. These new technologies and instructional strategies that we have will allow a student who is out. So let's say they're on a hybrid, they're still in a class, they still have class pages, and will still have access to the resources that students who are solely on e-learning have. So they can miss a day or two due to an illness and really not miss the instruction. So that is one piece that will be advantageous moving forward. As far as band instruments, I know we talked about this. Do you know the answer?
Right now, band and chorus will continue with individual lessons, and we will be having instrument distribution as soon as we can facilitate that. The one issue with band and chorus and the performance groups for the musical department is right now performances are not permitted. Perhaps they can, and I've seen a number of other districts do performances with individuals via Zoom and other music platforms where they can work together from a remote capacity. But we will still continue to offer those classes as requested and scheduled. With regard to that, I'm going to jump on a soapbox here because I think this, the Salamanca District, the Board of Education, and our community is something that we can rightly be proud of. And while other districts are struggling with this from a staff perspective, we are committed to remaining and keeping our staff intact. We are not doing layoffs. We are actually adding staff. We've added cleaners. We've added security personnel. We'll be adding tutors. At this point in time, as I've said previously, this is an all hands on deck event, and this is not a time to be frugal and stingy. We need to do what we need to do to keep people safe to keep them well and to keep the continuity of our instruction at the top level that we can provide. I actually think when the sun sets and we come out on the other side of this crisis, that we will not only look back reflectively and say we did well, I think we'll say we did exceptionally well because we've been collaborative, we've been teams of individuals, grade levels, buildings, staff members, and this has forced us, as crises often do, to come together and put aside individual personalities and just work for the good of the order. The fact that there are over 200 individuals on this call in a district our size suggests not only are we listening, but our community is actually engaging with us. And that's something we can be exceptionally proud of. I'm going to pivot, as my new word is pivot, to Mr. Siebert. There's a question about backpacks for students being able to use backpacks. I'm not sure if we actually have discussed this previously or not. So maybe that's something you could help us better understand.
Specifically see the backpack question, but I know that there was a question earlier in regards to lockers. Currently speaking, lockers are not going to be used throughout the course of the day. So materials and things of that nature will be carried from one class to the next class. We have discussed the use of backpacks and believe that that is a good option at this point in time, even though from a historical standpoint, there was issues with that. But under these certain circumstances, that is a safer option than using the lockers.
Okay.
Thank you. So there is a question regarding specials or exploratory areas. I'm going to turn that over to our principals in a moment. But I also just want to make sure that we realize that we're not, particularly the high school level, we're not eliminating any courses. Some of them will be a little bit more challenging to do, some of the performance-based classes, but we found a relatively high degree of success in the spring. And I'm talking about things like tech classes and art. And since then, we've only gotten better at how we can do that remotely. So those will continue, but particularly at the elementary level, would Mrs. Beaver or Ms. Pavone talk a little bit about how specials or exploratory areas will be handled?
Base for Seneca, I've been working really closely with the special area teachers. We believe at Seneca that art, music, PE, STEAM, all of those special areas are extremely important to the educational pathway of our students. So we are definitely planning on having those special areas available to the students, but at this time, the safety of having students travel into other classrooms and moving about throughout the school day is not the best option. So the special area teachers and myself have decided the best option would be to utilize class pages and have the lessons or the pre-recorded lessons available to the students when it's convenient for them. So whether it be during their school day or when they're home through the hybrid model. But clear expectations, assignments, due dates, all of that will be coming home, whether it be for your child's ELA, math lessons, or art, music, special areas, all of those. So there will be no questions. And if you have any at any time, please feel free to contact me and I will do my best to answer those.
Terrific. Ms. Pavone, do you want to expand on that, or was that good?
That's good. Prospect is doing the same thing with specials being through class pages, just to limit the amount of individuals coming in contact with each other. So those will all be on the grade level class page. So I'll use second grade as an example. If you have a second grade student, there'll be a second grade page that has everything needed for that second grade student, including the art, music, library, STEAM, our Building Strong Warriors, and Seneca Language and Culture.
Terrific. So there's a couple questions that we might be able to get through kind of quickly, and I'm just going to make a note now. If for one reason or another we haven't sufficiently answered your question, we're politicians. We're not trying to avoid it. We probably just missed it as they're scrolling by on our little screen here. So don't hesitate to simply ask it again and hold us accountable until you get the right answer or what you're looking for. So one of the questions with regard to supplies, do you need to purchase supplies? I think it was touched on a little bit, but at all the levels, I'm going to say we do not Right, we're not having them buy stuff again. Nope. Do not purchase. You do not need to purchase supplies. We have them. We'll get them for you, whatever those supplies would need. If you are in person, we will have them for you. All right, that was probably the right answer. Someone wanted to know about backpacks with wheels on them. I always get frustrated. I usually try and think that I'm kind of cool and hip with all the things that are out there, but I haven't seen backpacks with wheels on them. I'm going to give this to Mr. Siebert because I don't know the answer. Mr. Siebert, backpacks with wheels.
My gut says no, because I think that would end up presenting some safety issues in the hallways if they're dragging them around behind them. I'd much rather see them actually on their backs where they can be carried and kept out of the way.
All right, thank
Mr.
you.
Siebert, while you're still on, driver ed.
Driver's ed, although we are holding the class in its place, currently speaking under the current regulations, that class is the one that's not going to be able to operate right away. As soon as we get, I guess, some more clarification and figure that we can do it safely, trying to put 4 people in a car for their driving part of it is violates every rule. So we are working on that and we will figure something out one way or the other before the school year comes to the end. But like I said, it is still in the schedule. We're still planning on running it. We just need to do it in a safe way.
Great. So one that was asked, I think a couple times and I overlooked it, but I have it back, is grading. And I'm going to ask Mr. Siebert to sort of expand on that in a moment, but I just want to reiterate that the level of accountability for our students with regard to assessments and performance, and I'm going to include into that the grading process, is going to be much closer to what it has always been. We know we had a pass, fail, and mastery in the spring, and there was some angst over that. We are confident that we are at a much better place with how we're delivering instruction and how we can assess student work. So I'm going to venture out and say we will anticipate going back to a traditional numeric grading system, but and maybe I misspoke, but Mr. Siebert and particularly Mrs. Beaver, if you want to just touch base on that, and if we're not prepared to answer, then perhaps that's the right answer.
Yes, it has been something that we've talked about throughout the course of the summer. We've kind of gone back and forth as far as what's appropriate. But at this point in time, we do agree with Dr. Beeler as far as going to back to the normal numeric grade is appropriate.
All right.
We'll be grading work also.
Terrific. Thank you. Let's see.
Just a new question regarding, do we contact the school, whether the student is in Prospect, Seneca, or the high school, to let them know what we prefer our child to do? As we mentioned earlier, we are completing individual household conversations. If you have not yet received your call, it should be forthcoming. And if you do not receive it in the next day or so, please contact the individual building, because this particular person has 3 individuals in the household. You can contact myself or Dr. Beeler at district office at 945-2400, and we can try to facilitate one quick, easy conversation to let the buildings know.
Let's see, a questionnaire specific for Prospect. When can Prospect parents expect the hybrid model to begin? I'm going to venture out and say we anticipate that the hybrid model will begin on September 8th. So e-learning for that first week. And then our goal at this point in time is to have students start coming back the second week. Ms. Pavone, how did I do? She's going to love to tell me I'm wrong. Go ahead.
Pretty good, but we're going to start a slow transition in. We don't want to start all students all on the same day. There's going to be a new learning process for kids too coming in the building. We won't be able to just go down the hallway and come right in the door. So it's going to be a gradual start starting the 8th, especially for our pre-K and kindergarten students who some have never been in the building. We're going to look at a very gradual transition into the building and look how we can do it safely so their first time in the building isn't all alone, just because that transition is so critical and there's a lot of nerves around our first time to the classroom. So starting September 8th, it will be a gradual transition, and we'll be communicating that in our letters that will be coming home as soon as we know who's hybrid and who's doing e-learning.
Let's see, I think Claire asked a question about instruction if they're in the classroom, will they just be learning on a device? No, they will be will sort of be back to normal instruction in the classroom. If they would typically have utilized the device for whatever that lesson might have been, I would anticipate that they would continue to do so. But we will, I hate to say, normal instruction, I guess. I don't even know what that means anymore. Traditional instruction of sort of semi face-to-face, and then working in as much of a collaborative group setting as we can. It won't be come into school and here's your computer.
There's a question if a student is doing e-learning but would like paper copies or hard copies of things to supplement or help them move that through. Yes, absolutely. We can make that happen. And I would refer you to speak directly to the teacher or to the school counselor or to the principal at the building. There'll be lots of folks that are standing by, which is, I think, why it's important to reiterate that we're not in a position of letting staff go or laying them off. We need all hands on deck, and everyone's roles might change just a little bit, but we are going to transition to an aggressive customer service, customized learning approach for each individual student and each individual classroom to the best extent we can. And if that particular student needs hard copies, let us know and we'll get them to you as we did in the spring. There's another set of questions or statements from parents and folks on this Zoom and Facebook thanking the district for the work that we're doing. And I would just simply say thank you. It's our privilege and honor to work in the district that collaborates and collectively is looking out for the good of everyone. That said, there will be times as a precursor that it gets a little bumpy. And I would say buckle up. And we're in this together. And if we get it right, thank you for letting us know. If we get it wrong, please let us know. And we will work as quickly and as expeditiously as we can to fix those things that we're not getting. We're all new to this, but I'm glad we're here in Warrior Nation to work together and collaboratively to get this done.
So we have a question about occupational therapy and AIS. I'm going to ask Mrs. Dudek just to touch briefly on occupational therapy in a moment. But as far as intervention services, if a student is here on campus for the hybrid model, we would anticipate that they would get that intervention services, perhaps not in the same exact delivery model of very close one-to-one, but we will work with them to modify that so they can get the intervention services. We have continued RTI and academic intervention over the summer, actually, and that has been done remotely. We identified our students who did not perform as we had hoped in the spring. One of the things that we have done differently and that we're relatively proud of, and a lot of districts just said, "Oh, great, yeah, you showed up to one Zoom each month, you passed, everything's great, move on." We did not do that. We held our students to a different level of expectations, and we didn't simply give them a failing grade. We incorporated the use of incompletes. And there are students who, to this point in time, are actually still working on work from the spring that was incomplete. And that was an important lesson that we wanted our students to know, is that, sometimes students will just turn in a piece of work and they know it's terrible. They'll take the 60 and be done with it. We're not interested in that type of work. You're going to do it until you get it right. So an incomplete will stick with them. And many of our students learned that lesson over the summer and have had constant contact with teachers who are still continuing to right now to work with them to make up that work that they were hoping to get out of in the spring. We also have intervention teachers who have been working with students since, I would say, mid-July, and those intervention services are going to continue. So Those services will continue. They just might look a little bit different. Do you? Oh,
Yeah,
go ahead.
I'll take the
Fire away.
childcare.
Yeah, go ahead.
There's a question regarding childcare for essential workers, and when the COVID virus first landed in early March, we partnered with a multiple county-wide agency, and we'll repost that information. I don't have the contact information handy, but we'll post that. And childcare has been an issue across the region. There was recently a multiple county meeting talking about the impact of closed childcare centers, in-home daycares, and childcare facilities have had on the region and the workforce. I know that there's a commission, that commission might be the wrong word for that, but there's a group of educational leaders across Chautauqua, Cattaraugus, Allegheny counties looking into ways that we can do this. Our partnership with the multiple county agency that is providing linkages and referrals for childcare is still active and in effect, and we'll get that information posted so that individuals who are deemed essential workers can access those services. In a much broader, long-term sense, this is an issue that we're concerned about as a district and are exploring ways. Many years ago, we had a partnership with the YMCA in Olean and Jamestown, where we provided latchkey childcare services before school and after school services via a grant. That is something that we would be interested in pursuing. Unfortunately, that's a bit of a challenge now with everything being shut down. So I will get that information out to the forum on the frequently asked questions page.
All right, Mrs. Dudek. How about, there we go. OT, are you able to expand on that a little bit?
Yes, not a
All right.
problem. So just like in the spring and all of our therapies, occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech, and social work, we do have the means that if you are choosing e-learning for your child, that we will have that schedule set up again once the building schedules are in place regarding who is face-to-face, hybrid, and who is going to be e-learning. If you are choosing the entire e-learning option, the therapist will be reaching out to you to discuss that. We do have the opportunity for therapists not only to provide services, but we are moving forward also with updated testing for those that have reevaluations. And for students that have been referred, we have process and procedures in place for that as well. So if you
Terrific.
do have questions regarding any of the therapies, again, don't hesitate to give our office a call.
Let's see. So we have a question regarding specifically the start time for Prospect and Seneca. And I'm going to apologize now because I'm not going to be able to give you the answer that you want, which is something like 8:43 or 7:37. We, as I mentioned it earlier, we're working with STA, which is the Salamanca Teachers Association, so that we can come up with start times that work for our staff as well as for students. We're anticipating that those will be staggered. So yeah, honestly, I'll just be honest. I don't have the ability to give you that time right now. I don't know. I can't tell you. Plain and simple. I will be able to tell you that by next week. What do you say? Next week, Wednesday? We'll set the deadline. All right. I've established a deadline. By next week, Wednesday, we will have start times and end times for our schools.
There's this question from us regarding an individual student's teacher. Stay tuned for that, and that will come directly from the building.
Let's see. So science labs, there was a great question on that. How will those work? Will students have to come in? Students will not, at this point in time, we do not anticipate having students have to come in for anything. In fact, we have a new teacher who joined us. She's a well-seasoned teacher with a wide range of experience. She's actually a consultant for a company who it's called Science Takeout. So she has an extensive amount of background in having students perform science experiments and safely, I'll preface that, as well as learning science remotely. So we anticipate that we will be able to tap into some of those resources. But as far as the simple question is, will students have to come in to take a science lab? They will not at this point in time.
So there was Sorry, there was a question, of kind of a drill down a little bit deeper. Will we repoll families? Yes, we will repoll you and ask you for input frequently and often. At the beginning and the end of the semesters, I wouldn't say that we need to go that long. We'll take input and feedback as soon as you feel you need to share it with us. And as the models change, if we're allowed and it's safer to reopen at a greater capacity, we will institute this process so that we can get the information from the community and the parents and the students and make sure that we can do it with the foundation of safety, wellness, and the quality of instruction. And I believe that is,
I think we have hit all of the questions. So at this point in time, if there's a question that we somehow overlooked, please just resubmit it. The other piece is, Mrs. Smith, my assistant, doesn't know this yet, but she's going to get a list of all these questions, and I can see her smiling at me going, oh. These will all be posted on the website under the frequently asked questions. So that you or can direct, if there was something that you might have missed or joined us late, you'll be able to go to that. We additionally have 2 more sessions at 4 p.m. and at 7 p.m. The 4 o'clock one is next week, Monday, August 17th. And then again on Wednesday, August 19th at 7 p.m. And then I really want to encourage you to go to our website. If something comes up, because every once in a while I'll get, sort of through the grapevine, I heard, something crazy, and I'm like, well, that's a good one. We haven't heard that either. Always just go to this website, and on here is my phone number. I'm just going to say that again. If something doesn't make sense to you, then it probably doesn't make sense to all of us. And if we need to change something, we'll change it. And if it's a piece of misinformation, I'll clarify it. It's really as simple as that. So don't be afraid to simply pick up the phone and call, and then utilize, look at, I have somebody calling me right now. Yes, that was Mr. Bridenstine. He was actually checking to see if that was really my phone number. That was indeed my
I can
phone number.
confirm it is.
Yes.
So there is a final question I think maybe the second final question regarding orientations. I'll touch on this briefly. Prospect is under heavy, that is an understatement, heavy construction. We'll be wrapping up. They're installing the kitchen and getting the kitchen ready for the brand new kitchen. The air conditioning is about ready to go live very soon. And we will need to try to do at least a virtual walkthrough of some way, shape, or form, because we have a number of students, kindergartners and pre-K students who've never been in the building before. So we'll try to do something with that. And then with regard to 8th grade orientation, Mr. Siebert, are there plans for any type of 8th grade conversation orientation?
It is in the works. It hasn't been determined yet as far as the exact date goes. It will be virtual. There'll be more information coming.
Great. So let's see, there are a couple other questions. I also just want to give Mr. Bridenstine an opportunity to phone that number one more time. Go ahead. I had it on vibrate. I have assigned him a particular ringtone, which you'll all be able to hear in a moment here.
Well, true leaders aren't afraid to look like idiots. So
that's right. So
I'll allow Dr. Bueller a moment of, there you go. Thank you, Dr. Bueller.
of course. And that wasn't just for today. That is always, to be honest with you. Okay, so very quickly, what will happen if a child refuses to wear a face mask? All right, so our code of conduct has been modified to include, the precautions that need to happen. If it is an older student who is simply being disobedient and therefore in this particular case unsafe, they would follow the typical discipline process. If we're talking about a kindergartner or a first grader who, quite frankly, just in the middle of the day gets tired and pulls their mask off, We'll deal with that in an appropriate manner, just as we would for any other, oops, there was Mrs. McGarrett, okay. Apparently everybody's trying now. So
Dr. Baylor promises to give everyone their own individual ringtone.
that's right. We'll deal with that in an age appropriate manner and work with the parents. I will tell you this, that, as we begin to prepare for students coming back onto campus, we'll provide some guidance and assistance to the community and to the parents of how this will look in more detail, what they can do to work with their students to prepare them to, wearing a mask, and just ensure that that's a smoother transition. I think it's important to recognize that while our teachers are phenomenal, the first teacher that a child has is their parent or whoever's in that parent relationship. And that is typically the most important teacher that they have. So we will honor that and do everything that we can to provide the resources for our parents and guardians of our students to help them with this transition moving forward. All right. I believe that is all of our questions. It's 2:45. We'll end here. And again, I'll let Mr. Bridenstine have the last note, but I just wanted to thank everyone who has helped up to this point, our administrative staff, custodians, buildings and grounds, the parents and educators and students who have helped us get to this point. We're very proud of where we are. We're committed to ensuring not just the safety, but the needs of our community are met.
Yes. So before I wrap up, I want to just give our building administrators and district administrators a chance if there's anything that they want to say to some 200 callers that are still on the call.
If I can just, this is Kristen Dudek from Pupil Services. I first want to thank all the staff that have been making all the individualized phone calls home to all of the families since Monday. I'd like to reach out to families if you are on and did not receive a phone call. Many of the calls that were made came to voicemails that were full or numbers that had been disconnected. If for some reason you did not receive a call from one of the wonderful staff members that were taking time to do that, please reach out to your students' buildings and follow up with the building specifically. Again, many of them were full or disconnected. We would like to make sure that we have everything correct for the start of the school year.
Anyone else? Okay. So with that, I will provide some information. The child care agency that we have partnered with is Accord, ACCORD, and they are based out of Belmont, but serve a multiple county area to provide facilitation and child care referrals and linkages for during this crisis for essential workers. And that would include hospital, law enforcement, food service, and educators. And their contact number is toll-free 1-800-498-2277. And we'll get this linkage up on the frequently asked questions page. If you have a specific question, you can let them know that you're an essential worker and that you're looking for a child care referral and that you reside in the Salamanca City Central School District. Then they'll reach out to us for some additional information and some perhaps some suggestions. So we also know for future parents. I can say that during this COVID crisis, we've only received one inquiry from this. That doesn't mean that there aren't others out there, but as the crisis evolves, childcare needs are going to change, particularly with students returning to school in some capacity over the next few weeks and few months. I would say as your circumstances change, let us know. We're here for you. You and your families and your child and children are the reason why we exist and why we're able to do the work that we love, the work that we're passionate about, and the work that we care deeply about. Please keep us informed of your needs. We will continue to communicate with you. And as this evolves, we will get it right. There is no other option, and we will continue to work tirelessly to make that happen. I want to thank our administrators. I want to thank our staff that have joined us on this call. And I especially want to thank our parents for your wonderful questions. And we appreciate your input, and we are pleased and honored to serve you and the Salamanca community. Thank you, everyone. Stay safe.
Thank you.